Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Ice Hawks back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right with Carlson, Quenneville scores!
Here's a chance for Herrick. Fighting scores! Off the face-off! Up in Zeminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it. Shoots one. Bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski. Another jam on the shot. Turning and firing. They go! Scores! They score! Now they catch each other. They both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Hello and greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado.
And Portland, Maine.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead Podcast, episode number 72 for Friday, December 31st, 2021. I feel like I should have a noisemaker or something. We're closing in on 2022. Anyway, if you're hoping for a podcast featuring guidelines for body conditioning scoring differences for livestock, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is CC Hockley, the AHL editor of Full Press Hockey.
And I'm Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And contrary to his belief, he's kind of a big deal. So you should go. Hey, as always, thank you for tuning in with us. We appreciate it.
And if you're new to hearing CC and I talk about hockey, we'd normally be here previewing the matchups in the AHL this upcoming weekend. But that's proven to be nearly impossible with 237 AHL roster moves over the last 4 days and 9 weekend games postponed already, with more probably going to happen. However, if you haven't checked out episode 0, now would be a good time. It's a short primer on some of the stats we usually talk about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, go check that out. So you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes. And let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes thinking about your New Year's resolutions. You're going to break them before February. Just accept it. I do. You'll never get that time back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey?
When was the last time you even made a New Year's resolution, Shawnee?
I think last year I made a resolution to get in shape. And I can confirm from yesterday's cycle that did not happen.
Hey, I can confirm from last point, nine months ago, I was 190 pounds and 188. And now I'm 208. So, I guess that didn't work out for me very well either, but hope springs eternal. We can always jump on that elliptical, jump on that bike, jump in those skates again. Anyway. All right. Well, like Sean said, previewing the weekend to come is a bit of a futile effort at this point with all the cancellations or postponements rather. So let's talk about the big news that has happened since our holiday episode and the gifts that we gave to the 31 teams of the AHL. NHL has reinstated the taxi squads. One of our worst nightmares as hockey people has come back around to haunt us once again. So that's going to be through the All-Star break in early February. And let's get to talking about it because this directly affects the AHL. NHL teams have the option to use a reserve squad, dyslexia, not doing me any favors there. They have the option to use a reserve squad consisting of up to 6 players. Taxi squad players will count as being in the minors for NHL salary cap purposes. Players will be able to be on the taxi squad for a maximum of 20 cumulative days. So if they spend 15 days on the taxi squad before being reassigned to the AHL, they can only spend 5 more days on the taxi squad, period. Some rules for who is ineligible for taxi squads, meaning they cannot be put on an NHL taxi squad. Unfortunately, these rules seem arbitrary and don't make a lot of sense. But one of them was that if a player was waiver exempt, he was ineligible for the taxi squad. However, Morgan Barron is waivers exempt. Kevin Ball, Philip Broberg, Kalen Addison is waivers exempt. Jake Lecision is waivers exempt. Arvid Soderblom is waivers exempt. And yet, all of them are on taxi squads as of Thursday morning. And I may have to do a little bit more digging because that just doesn't seem right. And Yeah, I mean, I know it was kind of like, okay, we're reinstituting taxi squads, and I don't want to say it was a knee-jerk reaction by the NHL because of the Omicron variant and COVID beginning to spread more readily. And anyway, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense at this point.
Yeah, and I remember when people like the rules first came out and I saw that like, oh, if they're waivers exempt, they can't be put on taxi squads. I'm like, oh, that's great. That means like a lot of the young talent will be required to stay in the AHL unless they are directly called up to active roster duty. And then immediately it was like, no, we're just going to do it. Like that wasn't even a problem. So I have no idea what the loophole is or how that's supposed to work, but you can't be waivers exempt and be on a taxi squad thing is inaccurate because lots of them are. But the other big piece of news that kind of dovetails with the formation of taxi squads is that teams will also be allowed to make emergency recalls from the minor leagues should COVID-related absences prevent them from fielding a full lineup of players. If they're unable to have 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, and 2 goalies available, they'll be able to bring up a player from the AHL to prevent playing a game with less than a full complement of skaters. They're also allowed to make emergency recalls of players with a salary cap hit of up to $1 million. This is an increase of $150,000 from $850,000 cap hit that had previously been the limit for emergency recalls, which doesn't change a whole lot. I guess it means you can, some of the guys who are on 2-way contracts, who are on 1-ways that are a little bit pricier AHL players can get pulled up, but I don't think that really moves the needle. But this also means that players who are ineligible for the taxi squad from the AHL are able to be emergency recalled, but they'd have to be on the active 23-man roster. But that doesn't really prevent them from just kicking it in the press box. But I think that's going to be the bigger hit. So taxi squad's still bad, but I think the emergency recall provision is actually what's going to crush a lot of AHL teams in a bigger way because let's say an NHL team has 12 positive COVID cases, which is not that unusual at this stage in the game, which is ridiculous. But regardless, that means they can just be like, oh, your entire AHL roster, basically. Cool. That's ours now. All your base belong to us. And then that AHL team is basically left to try and see who they can scrap together from, season ticket holders and local colleges on a moment's notice, basically, to field a roster that night. So I think taxi squad's bad, but that emergency provision to be able to recall players en masse is probably going to be worse.
Yeah, and looking over the provisions here that the NHL laid out, NHL and NHLPA, of course, they have to do it in coordination. But this little paragraph here, 3 sentences. Clubs will be permitted to assign a maximum of 6 players to their taxi squad. We've known that. All such assignments will be subject to waiver requirements. And here's the kicker: 2 words, as applicable. As applicable. So take advantage of those vagaries, I guess, as you will. Because like we mentioned, 6 guys, waivers exempt, and yet taxi squad they reside in, or they reside on, rather.
I mean, I'm amazed that there are guys who got put through waivers to be put on the taxi squad, and other teams didn't just snatch them up for a warm body to put on the roster. Like, who was it? I think it was Garrett Pilon went through waivers. Someone from Hershey that was like a useful player. I think it was Garrett Pilon that went through, and it was just like, how did anyone let that guy pass through? Or no, it was Scarbosa. Mikey Scarbosa went through waivers in Hershey. Or through the Capitals and got assigned to the taxi squad today. And I was like, how did anyone let, not a superstar at the NHL level, but still a completely competent 4th-line player in the NHL, just in a game right now where everyone's scrapping to, put guys on the ice. So I'm amazed by that one, but
I don't know, maybe gentleman's agreement or something. I mean, who knows what secret handshakes go on behind closed doors, but I digress. Sean, listen, we saw taxi squads last season, and while it kept the NHL afloat, it was a huge pain in the ass for us down here in the AHL. I mean, really, like trying to every week cover games, series, players that were or were not playing. I mean, it definitely diluted the talent pool, no doubt. I mean, there was ECHL caliber guys that shouldn't have been playing at the AHL level at that time, regularly through team chemistry into the wood chipper, caused a lot of guys to spend more time in the press box and on the ice. Listen, in your view, is this year's taxi squad going to be better or worse than last season?
I think it's very much going to be a case-by-case, team-by-team basis. As we mentioned, they're voluntary, and while I fully expect every team to have it stocked with at least one guy, Each team's approach and COVID caseload is going to determine how this goes. Same for emergency recalls. That's different than last season, where basically every team was like, we're taking 5 to 6 guys on the taxi squad. And it was by and large, their best guys from the AHL, more or less. So far, teams have stocked it, full of guys. Other teams have not. Boston has 1 guy in their taxi squad, and I think they just reassigned him. And that was John Moore, a veteran player. And that's could have been a paper transaction re-signing, but the fact that they walked, for the most part so far since this has happened, with just 1 guy. Calgary still has 1 guy, Byron Frace. They did just emergency recall Dustin Teenwolf because Dan Vladar is quote unquote non-roster, but not in COVID. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me, but that's fine. But Dustin Teenwolf is their emergency recall. I imagine he'll be back shortly, but Byron Frace is the only guy they have on their taxi squad at the moment. Yeah, both of those guys are important to Providence and Stockton, respectively, with John Moore and Byron Frace, but it's 1 veteran guy. That's a biteable bullet if I ever saw one. Texas, Belleville, and Ontario also have no one assigned to their taxi squad as of Thursday morning. Now, that's probably going to change, but we'll see. The Rangers, though, have Zach Jones, Morgan Barron, Tim Gettinger, Matthew Robertson, Johnny B. Good, Adam Hushka, and Keith Kincaid on the taxi squad and/or active roster. That's Hartford's top line, top defenseman, and both goaltenders, Gonzo. So they are going to basically be fielding, hodgepodge of ECHL talent for the most part. The Capitals, Flyers, and Red Wings are also taking a lot of their AHL's top talent for their taxi squad. More importantly, too, what's interesting is we're seeing the difference between teams' approaches to who they take. A lot of teams in that aspect have taken young talent, and this is something we've beaten to death. It can be dangerous if you just keep yo-yoing them, especially if you're not giving them playing time. They're out there practicing, not even with the full team, but with other, taxi squad players and maybe like your 4th line guys or whatever, but you're not developing those young guys. Their game has to grow. Whereas smart teams that develop young players are just sending veterans who understand the shuffle of this and are probably at some point just happy to be, getting some NHL time. Anaheim, for example, as of Thursday morning, has 31-year-old Greg Patterin, 27-year-old Danny O'Regan on the taxi squad. Those are veteran guys who very much know their game, and this is who they are. Tampa has 31-year-old Andre Schuster, 26-year-old Remy Ellie, and 25-year-old Darren Radish on the taxi squad. Radish, I guess, still a little bit on the young side, but he's not a prospect anymore. Those are all guys who their game is their game. It's really not going to develop too much more. Whereas the worst team in developing young talent, Montreal, has 3 players under the age of 25 on their taxi squad. Never change, Habs. Never change.
Definitely differing philosophies in regards to who they're going to call up and who they want to develop and who they want to sit in the press box. It's just SMH shaking my head. But anyway, Sean, do you think those trends hold though? Teams barely using the taxi squad, or teams building up or pulling up veterans rather, as opposed to the Utes?
To an extent, I'm sure if Anaheim gets riddled with COVID and has to call up its 23 and under prospects, it will, but as a last resort. In terms of filling out the taxi squad, I'm confident it's going to wax and wane depending on COVID caseload and especially depending on travel. I doubt Calgary goes on its upcoming 4-game East Coast road trip without taking some extra bodies on the taxi squad for insurance, maybe mixing in, them to get them some PT, a couple 4th line minute, kind of things. Same with Dallas at the end of January. They're scheduled to go to Buffalo, Detroit, Philly, and New Jersey for a lovely 4 and 6. If they don't stock up the taxi squad for that trip, I'd be absolutely shocked. If any of them get hit with new cases, that emergency call-up clause is also going to play a big factor. And those seem to kind of just be happening willy-nilly at random. It's 1 minute, everything's fine. The next minute, it's like, my God, we have 11 positive cases. And, 2 staff members, a coach, and the equipment manager, plus one of our ticket reps and the guy who holds the door at the front are in COVID protocol. So now we need, half of our AHL franchise. So I'm sure it's going to basically be in the best of times, sparsely used and sparsely populated by smart teams and populated mostly by veteran guys. And in the worst of times, it's just going to be a free-for-all of who knows what. So cross your fingers and throw the dart blindly.
So yeah, man, as intriguing as all of this is, I tell you, you still haven't answered the original question, which is, do you think taxi squads and these adventures that have, stemmed from these taxi squads, are they going to be better or worse than last season's?
That's fair. And I think some teams will get by in a better scenario than last season. I think the AHL as a whole will be much worse for the short term for a few reasons. First, there aren't any junior players to fill these roles. Last season, we saw the CHL, meaning the OHL, the Q, and the WHL. Those eligible players that were 18, 19-year-old draft picks get to play in the AHL, which is normally not allowed due to the very stupid NHL-CHL agreement. Second, last season's taxi squad was there from the start, which allowed teams to have some time to prepare for this and build some depth through recruiting, signing, and have a plan for the roster for when those moments happened. Some of those plans didn't work out, but we saw Toronto last season just stocking up on usable goaltenders in the offseason. The Capitals brought in a couple of AHL veterans like Daniel Carr, guys that are like, okay, in a pinch, we can bring this guy, up and have him play fourth line minutes on the Caps. But we don't need him to be in Hershey. He's someone we can just kind of let, sit there on the sidelines until he's ready, until we need him. Sure. But this season's taxi squad is being sprung on them like a bear trap and is going to stretch some already banged up AHL teams like Hershey to the absolute thinnest point possible. Hershey's roster on Wednesday featured maybe 5 actual AHL caliber players on their 20-man starting roster. That's not great. And they still beat Wilkes-Barre Scranton, mostly because Wilkes-Barre Scranton also fielded a mostly ECHL-based roster. Alex Diorio led up some absolute clunkers. So, well, yeah, he's an ECHL goaltender. That's what happens. The NCAA also granted an extra year of eligibility to an entire graduating class, which is fair to the players, but also keeps an entire swath of otherwise pro-eligible, guys out of the playing pool. Because most of them are looking to finish their NCAA careers instead of turning pro, which I'm at least a little surprised by. I would have thought guys who had graduated, who had a chance to, cash an NHL or AHL paycheck would have been jumping at the cause. But, you only get to be a college legend for so many years. I also kind of understand that.
Sure.
Getting guys from Europe to come over is also mostly out due to travel restrictions, which sucks, as seeing as the AHL needs bodies and being able to kind of sell these, guys who used to be in the AHL or who are familiar faces of, hey, you come over here to the AHL and just by sheer dumb luck, you might get to play some NHL games and collect some NHL paychecks because, man, we're just throwing whoever we can up there. And there are a lot of former AHL notables in the KHL, SHL, Liga, who at beginning of the season, should this have been the way things were, probably would have jumped at that chance. I'm thinking of guys like Philip Maillet, Josh Curry, Jordan Wheel, Thomas Scholl, patron saint of the podcast, Adam Tambellini, Reed Boucher, Nick Baptiste, Michael Jolie, all of them in Europe doing reasonably well that are known quantities in the AHL that if you could have sold them on, hey, this is your fast track to the NHL, there's a very good shot that they will need a body at some point. You fit the role of warm hockey playing body that's, a competent veteran. You could get some NHL games this way. I imagine at least one of them would have been like, yeah, okay, that sounds great, but that ain't happening now. And that's another way in which the talent pool to draw from the AHL has gotten shallower. Now, that means a lot of these roster spots in the AHL are going to be filled by ECHL players. And yes, some of them are overdue for a legitimate AHL shots. Blake Winecki, Dylan Sadoway, Aaron Luchuk, Marcus Power, a handful of others. However, while I'm usually all about giving guys shots who have earned a look, a lot of the ECHLers that are going to get these upcoming opportunities in the A are more because they need bodies. And that's going to dilute the talent pool in the AHL and make the game less appealing to fans because 2-to-1, sloppy dump and chase kind of games do not a lot of fans make. And I always think about that, if this is someone who had never really watched hockey before and they come and watch a sloppy, just 2-to-1 dump and chase, grinded out low event kind of game, are they coming back? And I don't have the answer to that. Like I do, but I'm already in. This is, year 28 of 34 that I've been a hockey fan. So, but like that's, I think, going to hurt the AHL, not just the product to fans, but also for us who have to watch it and talk about it and analyze it. Like that also sucks for us because it's going to, be less fun and less entertaining to watch because it's going to be uglier. So I think in the short term, we're going to see some very, very dark times for some AHL games. Like randomly, we could just throw a dart and be like, oh, Cleveland at Chicago is suddenly an ECHL game for like a week. So,
well, talking about all this, the one thing is in the back of my mind while we've been ruminating over all of the facets of the taxi squads again, and that is the fact that they're only going to be around until after the All-Star break in February, or at least that's the plan currently. There is an option to extend that, but should this be a useful tool to help the NHL get through rough patches of COVID, we could see the AHL's business go back to normal after a little over a month or so, right?
I mean, that's true. And I very much appreciate your optimistic take as I get to be Dr. Stormcloud here. Because I am not as optimistic that this will only be a 1-month adventure and not for, if not, the rest of the regular season, a strong portion of it. I could easily see us, in St. Patty's Day, me and my Irish jersey and accent still waxing about the taxis. I can see that happening as well. And while the NHL looks to be shoring up its ability to soldier through positive cases and isolation requirements, I think the AHL is going to see games postponed and a fair amount of chaos. And while I'm usually a big fan of chaos, not in this way, I wish that wasn't the case. As if nothing else, it selfishly makes our jobs hosting this podcast easier. As this week behind the scenes has been an absolute nightmare of like, oh yeah, we're going to cover this series. That series got postponed. All right, well, all that research is out. Now we got to try and cover another series. Well, that one got postponed too. Sucks to suck. Like, oh, all those players you were going to talk about and feature, gonzo. So yeah, like it's going to make everything worse. And I hope that this is just a early February kind of patch, but I don't think it will be.
Yeah, and I know that me, ever the optimist, Mr. Blue Sky, you are definitely, it's funny because if you're watching on video, you can clearly see I'm wearing the white jersey and Sean is clearly wearing the black. So
not to mention like you have a nice cloudless blue sky behind you and mine's all like cloudy and overcast.
A little ominous, as it were, with the city of Portland in the background. But yeah, I mean, you're definitely my Mr. Knight to my Mr. Blue Sky. So nice Portland Pirates jersey, by the way. Always good to see that logo. Solid minor league logo, I would say. So.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, I figured, since we're talking about things from past seasons that maybe shouldn't be here anymore, the Portland Pirates jersey just kind of,
I mean, we didn't even coordinate this, but yeah, we must have the same vibes going on because I've got the Quad City Mallards going on over here. May they rest in peace in the ECHL graveyard with all those other teams. But anyway, all right, I think should take, let's take a little break. On the other side of it, we're going to get to the Nolan Stevens, Will Bitten trade. St. Louis and Minnesota. Exchanging a couple of AHL level forwards. So we'll get into that on the other side here. But if you're just here for the Taxi Squad discussions, as always, thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also check us out on social media. Links to our social media, as well as links to our YouTube channel and popular podcast links can be found at our Linktree page. And the address for that is linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. That is link tango romeo.echo/the Calder Farmstead. We are going to run some advertisements, but we'll be right back. All right. I would say this, Justin, but it's been a day or two. We have a trade. So let's get to it. St. Louis, the Blues have traded Nolan Stevens, longtime, well, I guess prospect, maybe kind of on the cusp of not being a prospect anymore, as Sean shakes his head no. Nolan Stevens heading to the Minnesota Wild organization to play with Iowa, more than likely in exchange for fellow forward Will Bitten. So to me, on the surface, this just looks like trading a right-handed forward for a left-handed forward, but let's dive in a little deeper. So Stevens, he exhibits physicality with some decent size, and his scoring inconsistency, we've highlighted a couple years back, that seems to have resolved itself because he was both facilitating and getting his stick on the puck in front of the net during the last 2 games against Hartford when Springfield, the team he was playing for before he got traded. Yeah, we covered that in episode 70. He yielded an assist and a goal on that weekend of December 18th and 19th. In 19 games played so far, he has ranked in the 64th percentile amongst forwards. Not too shabby. It's good for a third line forward rating this year. In 2021, when he played for Utica, 27 games played, 67th percentile. Was good for a second line rating last year. 29-20, the last year of the San Antonio Rampage. May they rest in peace. 50 games played, 62nd percentile, also good for a second line forward rating. I would say that's pretty consistent over the past 2 seasons and change, but with only 3 goals in 20 games played this year, it looks like he needs to still shoot more. I know we spoke about that, is that he has a good shot. He needs to put the puck on net more. He does have 9 assists though, so he facilitates well enough, and I suppose that's another feather in his cap. Will Bitten, on the other hand, he's a fast dude with some tremendous work ethic, but he just has 3 goals and 5 assists in 23 games played this year. And it makes sense because he is more of a facilitator rather than a shooter, kind of the opposite of Stevens. This has definitely been a bit of a down year for Bitten, though. 23 games played. He's in the 21st percentile. Oof. Amongst this season's forwards. For those keeping score at home, that is a replacement level rating. 2021, 31 games played. He was in the 66th percentile as a second line forward, or at least the rating for a second line forward. 2019-20, 51 games played, 38th percentile, fourth line forward rating. He seems to be doing this a little bit over the past 3 seasons, a little bit cresting and troughing, but he's hovered around 0.4 to 0.6 points per game the past 3 seasons. I can only imagine Springfield only hopes that they get the 0.6 points per game Bitten instead of the 0.35 points per game that he is averaging thus far this season. That's my take on things. Shawnee, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm happy that we have a good old-fashioned hockey trade here, although a kind of surprising and rather shocking one is I couldn't really put together what either side was jumping at the bit here. It's more of just like, hey, let's pull a random guy out of the bag and, we'll send him to you and you get to kind of, pull a random guy out of the bag that's like, I mean, neither are terribly hot prospects. Stevens, I think, is 25 now, so not even really a prospect. Bitten's a little bit younger, but Stevens, like I said, a bit older, has a bit better offensive polish to him, some defensive utility, more consistent overall, but his skating keeps him from really being anything more than a AHL middle six kind of forward who can be an above average penalty killer. And that's, I mean, the numbers from the model that you just kind of went off from there, it backed that up. He's been, somewhere between a second and third line kind of guy most of his AHL career. And watching him play it most of those seasons too, that kind of backs it up. Like, he's got utility in the AHL, but I would be shocked if he ever got an extended look in the NHL, if for no other reason than we needed a guy and he was a guy that plays professional hockey. So not necessarily a merit-based call-up, but more of a we needed people. I can see Stevens being more of a Tim Army kind of guy, though, in terms of going to the Iowa Wild, as Tim Army has shown in the past to like more physical guys to fill out the bottom of his depth chart. He's been holding on to Cody McLeod for years. Dom Turgeon also down there. So is Keaton Thompson. A lot of just big physical, meat grinders. Dom Turgeon a little bit more skilled, but still, I think my point holds. He likes his teams to be able to be kind of gritty in the nicest way possible. I will put that. While Stevens is, I think, better than all of those guys, he still fits that kind of able to be physical, grind away, kill penalty style more than Will Bitten. On the other side, the T-Birds lack team speed out of Torpachenko, Hugh McGing, and maybe Kian Washcrook. So Bitten should be able to add to Springfield in that sense, because they do have a lot of forwards that are not the fleetest of foot. However, I don't know how well Bitten fits in that T-Birds lineup, as he's very much a pass-first playmaker who needs finishing talent to be useful. And it's kind of where you see some of those like crests and troughs. Let's see. This year, not a lot of shooting talent on Iowa that he's been on lines with. I mean, he doesn't get a lot of time with Rossi and Boldy, who hasn't played that much this season. So you can see kind of that downward trough. Whereas in the previous year, he got a lot of time, riding shotgun alongside Iowa's better forwards. Trough goes up. They had good shoot talent. So when we talked about this in previous episodes, when looking over Springfield, that they have a lot of guys who are decent shooters, but it's not a team that is overflowing with talents. Nathan Todd's a pretty good shooter, but I wouldn't call him a sniper. The only sniper they really have is Hugh McGing, and his style isn't a fine soft ice and wait for a pass style that would be, I think, more beneficial to someone riding shotgun with Will Bitten. Hugh McGing is more a skate on the rush and shoot kind of guy, but he struggled with that because of the physicality of the league and getting to the inside. He hasn't had those opportunities. So I don't know if Bitten putting him with Hugh McGing is really going to give either the boost that you would hope for. But line chemistry is basically more or less blind dart throws and random, as we've learned through many a season. So we'll see if that works out for them. But it is kind of an interesting trade when you look at it. It's like, I mean, I guess you could argue that Iowa won and they got the better player right now, but it's not like a capital W, we're fist pumping as we're signing the papers. Kind of like, I think Stevens is probably better, but I think it's at least close, and they're both different players. So we'll see.
Well, and what's interesting, Sean, is looking back on these guys past 4 seasons, they both are, in their 4th season in their professional careers. Nolan Stevens has been in the St. Louis Blues pipeline the whole time. Obviously he has split that time, 2 seasons with San Antonio, Utica last year when St. Louis hitched their wagon to, the Utica Comets alongside Vancouver last season. But Will Bitten he is in the same boat. 4 seasons in the AHL, all of them have been with the Iowa Wild. And a part of me is wondering, like, is this just kind of okay, this guy has either reached his ceiling for the Wild. This guy has reached his ceiling for the Blues and what they expect of him and what they could do for not just the AHL team, but also the NHL parent club. I mean, maybe like I've said many a time on this show, Sean, a change will do you good. Again, listening to that Sheryl Crow song and thinking that, okay, maybe just a change of scenery will do one of these guys good. I mean, hell, it's working for Chris Wilkie. What's up?
I was going to say Will Bitten technically was traded to Minnesota. So this is his 3rd NHL franchise, but he didn't play for the Montreal Canadiens who drafted him. So,
okay.
I mean, just wanted to sneak that in there, but
Sure.
I do agree with your kind of general philosophy of like, I wouldn't say Will Bitten is necessary. Like Nolan Stevens is very unlikely to get better as a player in a drastic way. He's, right, I believe 25 now.
Yep.
And that's kind of the age in which, you pretty much are who you are as a hockey player. Like you are at the peak of your like physical prime. And yeah, he's 25, July 22nd, 1996. So he's going to be 25 until next summer. But you're pretty much at the peak of your physical prime. So if you're not getting it done when you're in that place, you're probably like, that's the best you're going to be. So if you're not getting it done and making, the NHL take notice of you at 25, 26, you're not going to be like suddenly peak at, 28. And yes, there are a handful of guys that do that, but like the, 1% of guys, do we really think that's Nolan Stevens? Bitten, on the other hand, I mean, he has a little bit more runway left to, try and make a stand, but he's running out of it. That's for sure. Maybe a change of scenery for him will do him some good and be able to, spark some of the development we'd hoped to have seen from now that he really hasn't made good on. And that's not to say it's entirely on him. There are, laundry list of reasons why guys never get better despite being still very skilled AHL players. But I was kind of surprised to see that. And it does look like, too, either of them would have had any direct reason for requesting a trade other than just, I want to play somewhere else, which, I mean, if that, it's not like, Will Bitten is from Springfield or St. Louis and, something like that. They're both from Canada, probably not that far apart from each other. I don't know the geography of Canada that well, but so it doesn't seem like that was a cause. This really just seems to be hey, maybe, a new change of scenery will, do something good for you. We don't really, as an organization, have that much invested in you at this point. You're not really in danger of getting a merit-based NHL call-up. So let's see if we can send you somewhere else that, maybe you can blossom.
And I did notice Bitten, in just kind of a little bit of a sidebar here. Bitten is from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And, if the Iowa Wild didn't want an immediate return, a la a player, Belleville would have been like, look at them future considerations, though. I had to.
It's fine. It's fine. I really do. We have to put that somewhere in the background on YouTube. I got to get to work on that.
Yes. Yeah. Figure out how to squeeze that in. But
yeah.
Anyway, Sean, before we get to the outro, I'm going to call a little bit of an audible here. My friend, we are closing in on 1 year here in the Calder Farmstead. January 19th, 2022. 2021, January 19th was our first episode as the Calder Farmstead. And Sean, can you believe it? In this wacky ass time that we're living in, we have done not one, but 2 rounds of season previews in a calendar year. I don't think we're ever going to be able, Lord willing, and the COVID cases don't rise, but I don't think we're ever going to be able to say, oh yeah, we January we took care of February we took care of the season previews for 28 of the 31 AHL teams, and then hell, we did it once again, in September and October. No big deal.
I like our season previews are far and away the most laborious thing we do for this show.
Oh,
because
Jesus,
yes. I mean, we did what 400 and almost 500 players we previewed for that over 31 teams in 31 days.
Yeah.
It's the fact that we did it twice in the calendar year really does. It signifies that we truly are crazy people and should be committed. But I mean, it is. It does seem like a whirlwind. Like this is episode 72. And every time I keep like updating the outline for each episode, I'm like, we've done that many of these plus a couple others that are like, mini it's wild, but we're going to keep kicking, keep on going as long as, games don't get postponed and rosters are at least semi-consistent. We can do previews and recaps at least quasi coherently. We've already gotten scooped a bunch of times, so I'd like that not to happen. And that's kind of why I saw us getting scooped on all 4 series coming. And I'm just like, you know what? It's fine. I don't need to do all of that work up front just to have it be live and relevant for like an hour. Utica did it twice to us last season, where they scooped us, where we previewed them, and within 40 minutes of the episode being live, they're like, yeah, those are canceled. Just kidding. So,
yep. Yeah. And it happened a number of times last season. I mean, of course it would. And then it happened and has started to happen more frequently.
I think twice this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Belleville. And then I think one with Rochester. I don't remember. Belleville, definitely.
And then a few games in the speed round that we predicted that were also,
negated.
That's right. Speed round.
Less important, but I think there was one. I know there was definitely one with Belleville. I think there was a Syracuse one, but I don't remember. Anyway, we're waxing poetic here. Let's power it down here. Let's get the outro.
Yes, let's head to the outro. That will do it for the show. That's it for it. Thank you for watching and or listening. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs, or pro wrestling, if you will, at fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcast drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website. That's the list of all the podcasts that Full Press Radio sponsors and platforms. And hey, enjoy. We appreciate you enjoying us and taking time out of your busy schedule to consume our podcast.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. If you're also if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, comment what you thought of the episode. Doing so helps others find the show. Your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at The Calder Farmstead on Facebook and Instagram. Links to all of that and more can be found in our Linktree page, which is linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So we can make music for you too. Cece, where can people find you?
Well, my name is CC Hockley, and you can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at FPC_AHL and at my personal Twitter handle at CCHawk. That's SEESEEHAWK. Majority of my tweets are about hockey. Big surprise there, but hey, pro wrestling, music, films, whatever, I need to chime in on, local stuff. I mean, there's wildfires going on in Boulder County right now. It's crazy time here in the Denver metro area, but yeah, I'll be tweeting about it. And hopefully if it keeps me interested, it's not going to be bullshit for you. Check out my writing on the Full Press Coverage Network at fullpresshockey.com. Enough about me. Shawnee, where can the people find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanObrien81. I'm also on Instagram. That's occasionally active and mostly pictures of my adorable dog Parker. That's at Sean O'Brien_81. At Sean O'Brien81 on Instagram is a different guy. You can find my stats work on Tableau, including the model, all of the player rankings, the matchup previews, the PDO stuff, the puck luck. That's the place where we do the goalie things as well. That is all at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase. bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase. All lowercase, all one word. Cece, take us home.
That will do it for episode number 72 for the Calder Farmstead AHL podcast. For the toughest SOB in the AHL analytics game, Sean O'Brien, I'm CC Hockley. And as always, keep your stick on the ice.